In a little while, we're going to be talking about John Cleese. I mean, John Cleese was due to appear at an event at Cambridge University. Well, it was the Cambridge Union, which is the students, and he cancelled himself. And the reason he cancelled himself was back in like 50 years ago, half a century ago, in Monty Python. He starred in a sketch in which he played Adolf Hitler, or a facsimile of Adolf Hitler. And he said that because of that he probably would get cancelled, and there's a reason for that. But let's discuss it with comedian Leo Kearse. Good evening, Leo.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good. My question is, now I was just explaining, quite amusingly, John Cleese has cancelled himself from an appearance at the Cambridge Union because he said he played Adolf Hitler, or pretend Adolf Hitler, in a sketch in Monty Python half a century ago, and he said no doubt that would incur the wrath of the woke warriors and he'd get cancelled, so he might as well do it himself before they did. And the reason he did this is that an eminent art historian, Andrew Graham Dixon, who appears on telly quite a lot, in a lecture, he did a sort of brief impression of Adolf Hitler and has now been blacklisted by the Cambridge Union for doing that. Now, you know, you're a young guy, but you must know the history of comedy. Throughout the 60s and the 70s
very young.
and the 80s, it was commonplace in TV comedies for famous comedians to mimic, to impersonate Adolf Hitler. Why suddenly now, or why in today's climate, is it some sort of cultural crime? Why can't you impersonate Adolf Hitler anymore?
Well, yeah, it's ridiculous, and obviously Andrew Dixon or Andrew Graham Dixon was impersonating Hitler to make a point about bad taste, because Hitler, of course, was an artist before he became a dictator and a genocidal maniac, and did
a rich and varied career.
Yeah. I mean, you've got to be honest. Like, I mean, sometimes people try to get me cancelled because I'm right wing, and I'm like, well, maybe artists who are right wing should be encouraged, because the alternative seems to be going into politics, which seems to end up worse. I think if Hitler had been encouraged to be a watercolor painter, we could have avoided a lot of unpleasantness. But yeah, Hitler is, you know, was a pretty ghastly painter. It was real shortbread tin stuff, all these like sort of nauseating watercolors. And he and the rest of the Nazis gathered together all the modern art, what do they call it, the Intentat Kunst, and so the stuff they thought was, they destroyed it. They banned it. They persecuted the artists, and so the guy who got cancelled, Mr. Dixon, was making the point. Was making a serious point about bad taste, and sometimes to make a serious point, you have to summon.
I mean, point taken. I mean, it's ridiculous what Cambridge the Union has done to Andrew Graham Dixon. Typical illiberalism from people who think that they're liberal and left wing, fascistic in behaviour. Actually.
Oh yeah, you can probably remember in the 80s when the liberal left were actually trying to get controversial and seditious works of art shown in galleries and theatres. And, it was the religious right who are outside with a placard saying, ban this sick filth. And now it's flipped. Now it's the right wing who are like, well, chill out, guys. Let's just have the artists can like display what they want. And it's the liberal left who are cancelling things because they don't fit with their strict theological puritanical code.
So, but let's get back to the basic question. Why can't anyone impersonate Adolf Hitler? What's wrong with impersonating the Führer? Why can't you do that?
I don't know. I think it's ridiculous.
Cheers, by the way.
One of my favorite comedians is Frank Sinatra. So he's a guy who dresses up as Hitler and sings basically Frank Sinatra songs, but changed so it's like, I've got you under Berlin, and it's hilarious. And the great thing about it is it mocks the Nazis. It's taking all the power away. Taking all the power away from the Nazis.
The best thing to do to tyrannical dictators is to mock them. And I just don't understand why you're no longer allowed to mimic Adolf Hitler. What's wrong with it?
It makes no sense whatsoever. It makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. And John Cleese, for all that people say that, you know, he cancelled himself, I mean, he didn't really cancel himself. He was put in an untenable position, because if you're delivering a speech at a university, you can't be walking on eggshells and worrying about how it's going to be interpreted and what the ramifications are going to be. I mean, the greatest censorship is actually self-censorship. And obviously that's informed by people getting cancelled, because you think, well, that's where the boundaries lie. But I think for him to go through with it, he'd have to self-censor when he's actually giving the speech to the union. So, you know, by actually censoring himself before he gets to that stage, he's drawing attention to the fact that, you know, they've got these puritanical ideological rules, and he doesn't want to have to follow them. And he's perfectly happy. If somebody else finds a similar venue, he's perfectly happy to give the speech somewhere else.
I mean, also, he's referring back to a very funny sketch that they did on Monty Python. Where,
and on Fawlty Towers, the classic
I was going to say, you know, the Fawlty Towers episode, which for a while was withdrawn. I mean, the Fawlty Towers episode's got one of the funniest.
In case it offended any Nazis.
I mean, you know, exactly. I mean, why can't you do that? I mean, there he was.
It's ridiculous.
Stop talking about the war. Well, you started it. No, you started. No, we didn't. Yes, you did. You invaded Poland. It's one of the great lines of all time. Why can't you do that, Leo? I don't get it. Why has talking about the Nazis and mocking the Nazis, impersonating Adolf Hitler, become a cultural crime against wokeism? Why is it a crime?
Everything has become a cultural crime against wokeism. There's very little you can actually openly do or mock. And to be honest, you know, considering Hitler's a straight white man, I thought they'd encourage him being mocked. But yeah, I can't get my head around it at all. Mel Brooks understood perfectly that the way to.
Yeah, what about that? Yeah.
Yeah, the way to take the power away from the Nazis is to mock them. And if you think about you know, generations of neo-Nazis who came after Hitler, they're going to be dissuaded from following Hitler if they know that they're ridiculous and they look ridiculous and people are mocking them. So there's immense like social power in mocking Hitler and mocking, you know, similar totalitarians.
Yeah. But I think to try to answer my own question, I think it's this. I think that
I didn't know you came with your own answer.
Yeah. I don't actually need you, mate. I can do this myself. No, I think it's that this snowflake generation, they want to kind of expunge anything from the past that wasn't very nice. And so the Hitler and the Nazis, on balance, weren't very nice. So let's not even think about them. But it's nonsense.
Right.
I mean, people should be able to mock Adolf Hitler. They should be able to mimic and impersonate him. And anybody who says they can't doesn't know what they're talking about, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. No, I've got to agree with you there.
All right, Leo, stick it into your act, a nice Adolf Hitler impression. Start off with it. That's my advice. Great to talk, mate. Thank you very much. Leo Kearse, comedian there.